Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the New York Metropolitan Transportation Council's Program, Finance, and Administration Committee, or the PFAC meeting. My name is Deborah Nelson, and I will be chairing this PFAC meeting and representing the New York State Department of Transportation Commissioner Marie-Therese Dominguez. This meeting is being recorded, and the recording will be posted on NYMTC's website within the next 2 weeks. Today's meeting is available by webinar as well as in person at the NYMTC office located at 25 Beaver Street in Lower Manhattan. For the meeting audience who are on the webinar, your lines will remain muted throughout the meeting. The chat pod is being monitored by NYMTC staff. During the public participation section of the agenda, registered speakers will be called on in the order of their registration. Registered speakers who are participating by webinar will be called on and their lines unmuted for their remarks. At this time, I'm going to begin the roll call. When I say your agency, I ask that each representative state your name and the NYMTC principal that you are representing. As I mentioned, I'm going to start with the voting members. And as I mentioned, I'm Deborah Nelson, and I am representing the New York State Department of Transportation Commissioner Marie-Therese Dominguez. Next, New York State Department of Transportation. I believe Yogesh was on.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said New York State. My name is
New York
Yogesh
City
Sangvi.
Department of Transportation. Yeah.
Sorry for that. My name is Yogesh Sangvi from New York City DOT, representing Commissioner Rodriguez.
Thank you. New York City Department of City Planning.
Good morning, Deb. Jack Schmidt here, representing City Planning Commission Chair and Director of the Department, Dan Garodnik.
Thank you, Jack. Metropolitan Transportation Authority.
Good morning. My name is Tiana Grimes, and I'm representing CEO of Metropolitan Transportation Authority, Jano Lieber.
Great, thank you. Nassau County.
Good morning, this is Joe Cuomo with Nassau County Department of Public Works, and I'm representing Nassau County Executive Bruce Blakeman.
Thank you. Suffolk County.
This is Chris Chatterton, representing Suffolk County Executive Steve Ballone.
Thank you, Chris. Rockland County.
Pat Gurdon, representing Rockland County Executive Ed Day.
Great, thank you, Pat. Putnam County.
Good morning. This is Barbara Barossa, representing County Executive Kevin Byrne.
Thank you, Barbara. And Westchester County.
Good morning. This is Craig Lader, representing Westchester County Executive George Latimer.
Thank you, Craig. So now for the advisory members. The Port Authority of New York and New Jersey.
Good morning. This is Jay Sheffield, representing Rick Cotton, the Executive Director of the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey.
Thank you, Jay. New Jersey Transit. Do we have anyone from New Jersey Transit? Okay, next, North Jersey Transportation Planning Authority.
Good morning. This is Melissa Hayes here on behalf of Executive Director David Barrett.
Thank you, Melissa. New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. Okay, Federal Transit Administration.
Good morning. This is Dan Moser, representing FTA Region 2 Administrator Mike Collada.
Thank you, Dan. Federal Highway Administration.
Adamani, representing New York Division Administrator Rick Markey.
Thank you, Gautam. And the United States Environmental Protection Agency. All right, well, thank you. And thank you. By my count and under our operating procedures, we have a quorum for today's meeting. So we will now hear from NYMTC's Executive Director, Adam Levine, who will give his report. Adam?
Thank you, Deborah. Good morning, everyone. The following are some of the noteworthy events that have taken place since our last meeting in September. As usual, it has been quite a busy autumn here at NYMTC, and here are several highlights of the extraordinary work we have underway. At our September meeting, you may recall that a transportation conformity determination for calendar year 2023 was adopted. Last month, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency accepted our determination. Since then, it was determined that a transportation conformity determination will be required in calendar year 2024 for anticipated amendments to the 2023-2027 Transportation Improvement Program and the 2022 to 2050 Regional Transportation Plan. Project data collection from the member agencies is underway. Work on the next long-range transportation plan, Moving Forward 2055, continues. 5 public outreach pop-up events were held in the Lower Hudson Valley, New York City, and Long Island at places like Nyack's famous street fair, Bed-Stuy Alive, and the Long Island Fall Festival, with one more event scheduled for tomorrow in the Bronx. Over 600 people have participated in the Moving Forward 2055 survey, either at one of the pop-up events or on the plan website, www.movingforward2055.org. Focus groups and topical workshops are also in the offing. The plan consultant is now under contract, and a kickoff meeting is scheduled for tomorrow. The inaugural meeting of our Thriving Communities Network was held on October 28th. As you may recall, this is an effort NYMTC is undertaking to help registered non-governmental organizations learn how to participate in planning processes so that they can compete for federal, state, and local transportation funds to advance projects in traditionally underrepresented and disadvantaged communities in the NYMTC region. Meredith Davis, community planner with the U.S. DOT, gave a presentation on the federal Thriving Communities program. This was followed by a presentation on our local effort and a discussion with the attendees as to what they need to help make transportation improvements in their communities. The next meeting of the Thriving Communities Network is being planned for January, and it will focus on the data resources NYMTC can offer that would be helpful in making transportation decisions and applying for federal grants. Our community workshops are continuing across the region, with the most recent one held in the community of Valley Stream in Nassau County on November 9th. Community attendees were passionate and spirited, sharing concerns about traffic safety and the benefits of bicycle lanes with a level of detail that only comes from living in a place for years and in some cases their whole lives. Our next workshop will move up to Putnam County and will be held in Cold Spring, with a date still to be determined. We have updates on the several studies that are underway or imminent. Our regional waste movement study held its first public workshop on November 9th. Over 100 people attended from across the New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Pennsylvania region, and we received very passionate and well-informed input on this important issue. Another public workshop is scheduled for December 13th, and we're hoping to receive similar feedback. Regarding the Northern Westchester East-West Corridors study along routes 6, 202, 35, and the Bear Mountain State Parkway, a pre-kickoff meeting is tentatively scheduled for next month with local elected officials to get their feedback on the scope of the study. Our Palisades Shared Use Path Feasibility Study will be getting underway soon, and the project website is expected to go live in the next few weeks, so look for that. 2 more studies will be getting underway soon. A Safety Needs and Technologies Assessment for NYMTC Suburban County Study will assess safety and security needs in Putnam, Rockland, Westchester, Nassau, and Suffolk counties, modeled after the process used in New York City. The objective is to coordinate safety management, training, and education across jurisdictional borders. Next, a Transit Service Coordination Needs study will identify the core challenges that impede transit service coordination and develop a set of needs and strategies to make improvements. This study will support the broader Moving Forward plan and other regional issues by improving integration across the multimodal network. A few additional items worth mentioning. NYMTC traffic microsimulation modeling staff once again provided assistance to New York State DOT. On the FDR Drive 34th Street Viaduct Replacement Project, our team examined scenarios that could be used to calculate benefit-cost ratios. While on the Cross Bronx Expressway, modeling runs are being used in support of an FHWA Large Bridge Program grant application. The modeling team is also implementing selected enhancements to the 2019 New York BPM. Next, NYMTC resumed our travel survey community of practice meetings on October 24th. Attendance was robust with participation from New York State DOT, New York City DOT, New York City Department of City Planning, MTA, Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, and Suffolk County Transit, as well as the NYMTC and SUNY Avail team. The Community of Practice, or COP, will seek to coordinate with New York City DOT in their upcoming citywide mobility survey in 2024. The next meeting of the COP will be held in January. NYMTC recently hosted 2 very successful brown bag events. The first, held on October 18th, was presented by MTA staff, and they discussed the first mile, last mile toolkit they developed with NYMTC funding to improve access to Metro North and Long Island Railroad stations. The second, held on November 2nd, was presented by New York City DOT staff, and they shared the development of the New York City Pedestrian Mobility Plan, including many successful example projects. NYMTC Brown Bag events are now attaining AICP certification credit, and they're being advertised through the American Planning Association, so virtual attendees are coming from far beyond our borders. We hope to see you at future Brown Bag events. As I close my report, I want to thank the staff here at NYMTC, as well as our members, for all of your hard work. Your dedication and service to the people of New York City, Long Island, and the Lower Hudson Valley is, as always, very much appreciated. And with that, I'll pass the virtual microphone back over to Deborah. Deborah?
Great. Thank you, Adam. It's really great to hear how NYMTC really exemplifies with your work. You exemplify the importance of community-focused transportation. And we really want to thank you also for the technical support that you've given. It's been really wonderful. And the outreach that you're providing to the communities and others is just very much appreciated. Great work. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah.
So now we have the privilege of hearing about MTA's 20-year capital needs assessment, and it will be given by Michael Shiffer, MTA's Senior Vice President of Regional Planning. Dr. Shiffer comes with a very solid training and background with his master's in urban planning and his Ph.D. in regional planning. Dr. Shiffer leads the long-term planning activities that help to inform the strategic direction of the MTA's regional transportation network. Dr. Shiffer, we really look forward to hearing from you, and I'm going to hand you the virtual mic.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Can you folks hear me? Okay, thanks very much, Deborah, and thank you, Adam, and to everybody at NYMTC for having me today. It's really an honor to be here, especially because the work that I'm going to present represents the efforts of many folks throughout the entire MTA family, really over the last 3 years, and I'm honored to present it to you today. And to that end, I'm going to share my screen. There we go. Okay, so just nod if you can see my screen, if you can. Okay, all right. So bear with me for a second. I just want to get the window so I can actually see you. Okay. All right, so it's an honor to be here today. And really what I'm going to do is talk about the 20-year needs assessment. Many of you are probably already familiar with the 20-year needs assessment that MTA does every 5 years as really part of our capital planning process. And our capital planning process is a result also in this particular instance of a newly consolidated construction and development function at MTA, where we took the planning activities and consolidated them from our various operating entities under really one umbrella in MTA C&D. As you may know, we do a 20-year needs assessment followed by a 5-year capital plan every 5 years, and the 5-year capital plan is due fall of next year for the 2025 to 2029 capital program. Really, this particular 20-year needs assessment is, we believe, more comprehensive, granular, and data-driven than it's been in the past. And it really takes a careful look at the condition of this amazing network. And by sharing this information, we expect that our stakeholders, including many of you on the line, will have better understanding of the different parts of our system, as well as what it takes to keep it going. Really, we're at a pivotal moment here. You know, we face these existential threats. In particular, notably, we have aging infrastructure as an example. Many of you know more than 98% of Metro North service goes into Grand Central, and that could be disrupted if we have a failure along the Grand Central artery, which includes the Park Avenue structure, as well as the tunnel and the Grand Central train shed. And that needs to be certainly rehabilitated. Also, power failures could lead to frequent service interruptions. And in 20 years, over 75% of the subway stations may be more than 50 years old. So we recognize there's a need there to address the aging infrastructure. Also, with respect to climate change, you don't need me to remind you that recent months have demonstrated how real this is. While we were very proud of how quickly service was restored when we had interruptions, it's only going to get harder to really recover from these storms as they keep intensifying. And so without investment, we're going to have more challenges, and we really need to get ourselves equipped to deal with climate change. And then finally, with respect to evolving rider needs, many of you know that, and in fact, NYMTC helped us really gather the data as we did a regional scan of how riders use our network. Their expectations are also changing. Everything from remote work to up to the second information and smooth access to the system through various payment technologies is really important. And so to that end, we have three sets of priorities. One is to rebuild state of good repair, if you will. That's the foundation. That's absolutely essential. We also want to improve our network to meet the needs of the 21st century, particularly preparing for climate risk, as well as making our network accessible for people with disabilities. And then finally, also providing this information, timely information to riders and so forth. And then finally, expand. And that's what I'm going to focus on today. I'm going to highlight the rebuild and improve. But given the nature of our audience and the area that I'm focused on and my team is, we're going to talk a little bit also about the expansion, which is great, but you have to really address rebuilding and improving the network first. So in terms of the network, we have a tremendous number of assets, right? You know, over 8,700 rail cars, 6,000 buses, et cetera, et cetera. Huge amount of information. It's a $1.5 trillion asset. And we have folks and colleagues from throughout the MTA who are helping us to evaluate these assets, and that this evaluation continues. You can read more about this, by the way, at the information that we'll post later on, where you'll see the comprehensive 20-year needs assessment publication. We brought in a lot of data sources, including inspections, surveys of longtime staff, our new enterprise asset management system, and every asset is really inventoried and rated on condition from a scale of 1 to 5, following a lead from the FTA. And basically, you can see some examples, in this case, looking at station platforms where you have a very problematic situation on the left, which has since been addressed. You have adequate in the middle, which is, you know, functional, not ideal from a cosmetic perspective, but functional. And then, of course, good or excellent on the right. We also look at our power network. So, for example, 75% of the substations more than 50 years old. Many signals are 90 years old. So, you know, they're functional, but they need to be updated. Also, on an example that you see on the right is Livonia Shop. It was built over 100 years ago, and it really has prevented smooth transition to the more modern fleet because of some of the significant space constraints of the older equipment and the needs for servicing the new equipment. So that's an example of the kind of stuff we need to do there. In Metro North territory, I mentioned the Grand Central Artery. It was built again, you know, over a century ago, and you really have both the Grand Central train shed. Much of Midtown is built above the Grand Central train shed. That's what it looked like 100 years ago on the left. But as you can see, years and decades of salt and water dripping down, freeze-thaw cycles have taken its toll. In addition, there's challenges with station platforms and other parts of the infrastructure there. And on the sister railroad, Long Island, similar issues with respect to addressing structures both out on the island as well as in the city. The Atlantic Avenue Tunnel in Brooklyn, for example, is another key aging asset that needs to continue to stay in service as we move forward. And of course, the need to continually improve our signaling systems. Finally, probably the most visible aspect of state of good repair is the fleet. We continue to work on fleet renewal programs as we have through many decades. And we don't want to forget about the need to maintain bridges and tunnels, and innovative new technologies are looking at how to dehumidify, if you will, key cables on the bridges and other things like that. So a lot of neat stuff going on, but a lot of important work that needs to continue. In terms of improving, of course, accessibility is top of mind, where by 2045, we want to make sure 90% of our riders served on subways are accessing accessible stations, 95% of the railroads. We're also looking, of course, towards sustainability improvements to reduce emissions by 85% by 2040. And so you can see that we're looking towards electrifying a lot of the bus fleet. And of course, by maintaining the growth in our ridership, that helps us, of course, become a sustainable solution for the region. Resilience is also important in dealing with things such as the flash flooding you often see on streets, as well as preparing for coastal storms and, of course, sea level rise that you see in this case along the Hudson line. So you can see examples of where we need to continue to improve the network. And then from a customer perspective, new apps and fair payment mechanisms. So the point of all this is while we realize that it's important to look ahead to the future in potential new growth, we also recognize that we can't lose sight of the need to maintain a state of good repair. That is absolutely key. So we will rebuild and improve. And in addition to that, we don't want to miss the mark on needing to consider how people are changing their habits in the future. And for that, we've taken an innovative approach to looking at really a lot of different proposals that have been made through the years, and we want to look at them through the lens of how we can address the needs of the future. In particular, one of the things we did is we did a regional scan looking at how rider needs are changing. And really, this is not a recent phenomenon. In fact, many of these changes have been occurring over the course of decades. While Manhattan continues to have the highest concentration of jobs, and it will be very important, there's also significant economic growth throughout the region. We've seen the emergence of business districts both in the suburban territory as well as throughout the outer boroughs. And so what that's led to is more inter and intra-borough travel, as well as the reverse commutation, which we saw kind of take shape really in recent years and continues to be very, very strong. We've also seen a growth of industries that are associated with non-traditional travel patterns, such as healthcare, accommodation, food services, education. These are folks who ride our network at various times of the day and night, and not necessarily to the central business districts. And so we need to be continuing to provide mobility for folks in these areas. And then increase in off-peak travel. We know that New Yorkers frequently take subways, buses, and railroads even for healthcare for grocery shopping, social gatherings, recreational trips. That certainly came into focus in the pandemic, and we continue to see that as well. So with all of these, kind of trends that we look at, we need to really be cognizant of how to evaluate a variety of potential investments. And what we did is we kind of, raided our attic, if you will, and looked at all of these various potential investments that have been proposed over recent years. These proposals came from grassroots groups. They came from some non-governmental organizations, as well as from transit and transportation authorities, professionals, and so forth. So they came, and elected officials. These came from a variety of different sources. And what the challenge has been that they have all been developed at different levels of advancement, and many of them were using different assumptions regarding things such as cost, regarding things such as ridership and how do you count ridership, what's the base case scenario, and so forth. And so what we have done is we have looked at best practices really around the country and around the world to determine how we could baseline all of these proposals using consistent metrics. And these should be certainly no surprise to those of you on this call as transit professional and transportation professionals. Obviously, you want to look at the level of utilization or ridership, and you want to look at the cost. Those are key, as well as travel time savings. But then there's others such as capacity, geographic distribution, equity, resiliency, sustainability, network leverage. I'm going to go into these in a moment. But first, it's worth noting that really a number of these were fed with information from certain sources. So for example, we relied heavily on our regional transit forecasting model to predict how people would use the network. This is all outlined, by the way, in our 20-year needs plan. If you look at the appendix, okay, so if you go to the website, go to the PDF version of the plan and look up the appendices, and you'll see a lot of this described there. And the RTFM, really, this is where we have to thank NYMTC because we use a lot of the data from the best practices model as well as socioeconomic data to help feed our regional transportation forecasting model. And what it does is it not only gives us a sense of ridership, but it gives us a sense of how people will use our overall network. So for example, we can get a sense of how people may shift not just a mode, but also shift within the transit mode from one line to another. So it gives you a real good idea of network utilization using traffic analysis zones. You can get a sense, for example, of origins and destinations, and that really helps provide information for these various types of measures. So for example, with ridership, we're not just looking at new riders to the system. That's important, and we report on that, but we're also looking at diverted riders within our network, which then yields perhaps capacity improvements on other parts of the network. We look at cost. Cost is interesting because, again, a lot of these projects were estimated with different levels of cost assumptions. We baselined everything to a common analysis year of 2027. We looked at 3.5% inflation and just escalated everything, used standard metrics. In fact, we used FTA's standard cost categories so that we were, again, looking at the same types of costs on these projects relative to one another. That was very, very important. And of course, we also looked at standard operations and maintenance costs as well. With respect to travel time, again, the regional transport forecasting model gives us a sense of how travel time can improve or change. Sometimes it doesn't improve for certain projects or interventions. I mentioned network capacity before. And geographic distribution, how does this enhance access to key destinations, jobs, and so forth? Equity, very, very important. So really what we do here is we transcend a traditional Title VI analysis where you might look at race and income, and we look at, in addition to that, we look at access to automobiles, okay? We look at travel time. So you can get a sense of what are some of the more broad considerations of people based on their geography, and then we've identified areas of concentrated need. And then the model basically looks not just at where a new line might, whether a new line moves through an area of concentrated need, it looks at how many users of a line are coming from various areas of concentrated need throughout our service territory. And then finally, network leverage looks at whether MTA owns the right-of-way of a particular proposed route, or whether that's in municipal ownership in some manner or another, or state ownership, or whether it's in private hands. And of course, those different levels of ownership are weighted differently, and so you get a score. In fact, all this yields various scores. One of the things we found is, rather than providing a weighting for each of these, what we did is we report this information. But one of the things that we found was key was providing a measure of cost effectiveness. And for cost effectiveness, we recognize that travel time, no matter what background you're coming from or what the purpose of your trip is, travel time is very, very important. So we looked at travel time savings by cost, and so basically cost per time savings looks at the overall cost and then the time saved there. And so that was an important measure, but the others are also very important. And so what this led to is a lot of data, just, tables of data. This is an example of the data that's on our open data portal, and you can see just a lot of numbers. And to make sense of this, or help make sense of this, what we did is we normalized a lot of these numbers, so you could see kind of if cost per time saved relative to other projects, whether it's scored well on a 0 to 100 scale or scored poorly. Likewise for other things such as equity, sustainability, resiliency, capacity, and so forth. You could see how the various projects performed, if you will. And then this is further summarized in a table with Harvey balls, or these are the kinds of measures you might see in an old Consumer Reports magazine, where the darker the ball, the better a particular project performs. And so, when we first released the 20-year needs assessment, a lot of folks focused on this graph, and we're like, well, how'd you get there? Well, if you go backwards, you can go from the ball representation to the normalized scores, and even to the data. So you see how it all kind of ties together. And then furthermore, when we went into the projects, then each of the projects has a scorecard. And so you can go through them, and I'm just cycling through these now rather than going through them in any detail. I understand we're almost at time here. So, but just to give you a sense, and again, I encourage you to go to our online version of our capital 20-year needs assessment, and you can see the comparative evaluation and all of these projects summarized there. So where does that take us? Well, what are the next steps? One of the things we're tremendously grateful for is the fact that the state and the governor have stepped up to help us continue to operate at full service. That's so important, but that's just part of it. The next step, of course, is the capital program. And we continue to improve the way we deliver our capital program through the construction and development arm of MTA to deliver better, faster, and cheaper. And really what this points to is we've done a needs assessment. It just shows the breadth of what we need, and then we need to use that to guide the next capital program. which again is going to be due in the fall. So we recognize the need to maintain our core infrastructure, and we don't want to lose sight of the future. So you can read more about this at future.mta.info. I encourage you, especially those of you who are transit and transportation aficionados, to go into the PDF and dive into the appendices. Thank you very much.
Wow, there's a lot there. Very impressive, very informative. You know, your system is an oldie but a goodie. But when you mention $1.5 trillion asset, that really kind of gives us a perspective of just the challenges. But it is a very exciting time in transportation, and it looks like you guys are doing some great work. So thank you for this. Very informative. We do have a little bit of time for some questions. Do any of the members have any questions about this presentation for Dr. Shiffer? I'm done. Yes, Dan.
Hi, this is Dan from FTA, and I had one question. You mentioned in one of your latest slides that the next step is the 5-year capital plan, and of course, this is great information to inform the public as to how you get to that 5-year capital plan. Given the large number of expansion projects evaluated and the different scoring, was there any thought to also using this information to inform the RTP and provide a next level of specificity in that 20-year long-range plan? Because I think that would be helpful in some of our longer-range planning efforts.
I think so. I think, you know, our first goal was really to look at all this stuff and see kind of how it hangs together. And of course, you know, the idea is, you know, we're looking at that towards how we inform what, you know, goes into the RTP. And you know, the nice thing is what it does is it enables groups such as yourselves to really understand how these projects perform, so that, you know, we can make more critical decisions about inclusion and so forth. And one of the early things we did was we incorporated actually the overall comparative evaluation in the vision section. A number of the projects are already kind of in the vision section as it is. And we've also got projects a little further on the road to conformity and so forth. But the whole point is to help inform the larger conversation, recognizing we're not the only entity in the New York metropolitan area that provides transportation, of course.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions from members? I believe we still have a few more minutes. Stephanie, do we have any questions from the chat pod?
Not at this time, no, thank you.
I have a feeling, Dr. Shiffer, that we all just need to dive a bit more into this document, and then we may have many more questions. But this has been really very insightful and very informative. I really appreciate the presentation, as we all do.
Thanks, Deborah. And you know, from the people I see here, by the way, it's Mike. but you know, I have elderly relatives who would insist on the other part of it. Anyway, but thank you all very much. It's been an honor to be here, and I look forward to continuing the conversation as we move forward.
Well, thank you, Mike. And we will be continuing the conversation from our end at DOT as we develop our state master plan. So this will be a very good timing for us to have to be meeting up on this conversation. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
And then, so now we are going to move on to our next item on the agenda, and that is the public participation. So we will hear from any registered speakers with prepared remarks. Each speaker will have up to 3 minutes to give the remarks, and we will hear from these participants in the order that they have registered. We ask that all speakers limit their comments to relevant transportation and planning related items. Andrea, are there any registered speakers for today's meeting?
Yes, there are. We have Tony Gonzalez. I think he's on the webinar. Let me unmute him so he can present. Tony?
I'm sorry, this is Tony Gonsalves. Is that who you were looking for?
Yes, you may
Oh,
present.
hi. Sorry. I was on mute. So yeah, basically, just shut my door. My interest is on the 684-84 plan and this was based on the transportation corridor study and the findings report of August 2021. We have, in the town of Lewisboro, we have a lot of bypass traffic. So people that are bypassing the 684 intersection, and they come through the town of North Salem and the town of Lewisboro to then get back onto I-684 in the Goldens Bridge and Katona areas. And we know that this work will alleviate that. And so basically, I just want to stress the point of the importance of this work, and specifically the interim concept that was described in this report, which includes widening ramps and adding additional lanes, both on the northbound I-684 to eastbound I-84, as well as the westbound I-84 to southbound I-684. There's also some work that doesn't as much impact us, but on the west I-84 off-ramp. So actually it does. That's the other one, the I-84 westbound off-ramp to the northbound, southbound I-684. And so the point is we have this traffic is going through State Route 138 and State Route 135 and State Route 121, which all run through the town of Lewisboro. We have schools in those state routes, and it becomes a real mess, especially during the mornings when everyone is, school buses are going towards the school and picking up children, et cetera. And together with the bypass traffic that comes in from Connecticut through our town, it really creates a very congested situation within the town of Lewisboro. So I'm just wanting to stress the fact that this is an important project for us. It'll alleviate a lot of these issues within our town, and hopefully we can try to get this scheduled as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your. Do we have any other registered speakers, Andrea?
Yes, we do. We have Britt Bird from the Brooklyn Borough President's Office, and I will unmute him.
Hi, sorry, I didn't mean to register to speak, but thank you for the presentation.
Okay, no problem. So, Deborah, we have no other registered speakers.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so we will now move on to our action items on the agenda. All material related to these action items have been posted on the NYMTC website at www.nymtic.org. The first action item is to accept the September 21st, 2023 meeting symposium. I ask all voting members to announce their name and agency you represent when you make or second the motion. May I have a motion to accept September 21st, 2023 meeting synopsis?
Joe Cuomo from Nassau County, motion to accept.
Thank you, Joe. And may I have a second?
Second, Barbara Barossa, Putnam County.
Thank you, Barbara. Does anyone object to the motion? Okay, hearing no objections, the meeting synopsis is accepted. Thank you all.
Excuse me, Madam Chair. I'm sorry to interrupt. There was a Warren Lewis who had registered. It must have slipped, or he just registered, but he's on the line and he would like to make a comment.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
And I completely apologize because I had registered back sometime in October, so I thought I'd be on. I'm calling up with Tony Congal's, the supervisor of Lewisboro, just made some comments. We started a group back in 2014 called the 68484 Consortium, and there were 7 towns involved. Also on is Rob Scarano from Somers. But it was Ridgefield, Connecticut, Putnam County was part of it, Southeast, Somers, Lewisboro, Bedford. And while we were having these meetings, it was Westchester County Executive's Office and their planning department. The DOT, our interest is, which is what Tony mentioned, was that the 684 interchange and some of the other exits and things along 684 have caused serious problems in all the towns on the northern part around the interchange. That includes town of Southeast and Putnam County and some of the ones that Tony mentioned, Bedford also. So the DOT funded a study which wrapped up in 2021. It was the 68484 Transportation Corridor Study, and the project number is 8113.59 if you care to look it up. But they came up with a list of needed improvements, and there were 2 that the corridor group, the consortium, focused on, which was the one up at the interchange at exit 9 on 68484. Right now, and the other one was the Sawmill interchange, which is quite a mess in the morning. And what happens to all of these minor problems is it ends up backing all the traffic up on 84. They come down Route 7 onto 35. They totally destroyed Ridgefield. They mess up Lewisboro in the morning. There's thousands upon thousands of cars because they cannot get down the interchange on the 684, the 84 to 684. The same things in the evening hours. We had some meetings with Lance McMillan, Assemblyman Burdick, a couple of weeks ago, and one of the things that they're doing to start working on one of the interchanges is they have 2 bridges that are being replaced at a cost of $29 million. Right now, it's a 1-lane. It's really an exit. It's not an interchange at all. If you talk to them, nobody ever thought that there would be anybody coming from 84 down 684. They all thought they'd be going to Scranton, Pennsylvania. So that was never put. It was never put in at a full interchange. But anyway, the 84 west to southbound 684, the cost in that finding study was $150 million. They're doing the bridges. It's 2025 project that's funded for $29 million. Right now, myself and some of the other supervisors, we're working with our state Assemblyman Burdick and Senator Harcum and a couple of others. We're trying to find another $10 million to finalize the study of that. We expect the cost of that to be $90 to $100 million. We've talked in front of NYMTC before. This is pre-COVID, but I just wanted to make sure that you were aware that this is still something we're focused on and we're trying to move forward. If you have any interest in meeting with the larger group, we'd be more than happy to do that. And thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Okay. Any other comments, Andrea? Or do we move on to the next?
Okay,
great.
Madam Chair, thank you very much for that.
Yep, really appreciate it. All right, so our next action item is to adopt resolution number 569, fiscal constraint operating procedures. I will now ask Jerry Volkatz of NYMTC staff to introduce this resolution. Jerry?
Good afternoon, members. NYMTC's Transportation Improvement Program, which is known as the TIP, is required to contain a financial plan that demonstrates how it can be implemented. And part of that demonstration is that the projects to be implemented have sufficient anticipated resources. This is a test known as fiscal constraint, and this is a federal requirement. The attached operating procedures, which are very simple, 1 page, have been developed to increase the efficiency of the use of available funds and to also increase the fiscal transparency of the TIP. What we're proposing here, and we've worked this out with the member agencies, is an annual update of the TIP fiscal tables and an amendment of the TIP itself to include those tables each year at the end of the fiscal year. And this will identify resources potentially that are available for use that were not when the TIP was originally developed. Of course, the TIP is amended and administratively modified on a regular basis. So we urge the members to adopt these fiscal procedures, and that will help us best use our funding resources going forward. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you for the time.
Great. Thank you, Jerry. May I have a motion to adopt resolution number 569, fiscal constraint operating procedures?
Motion, Pat Gurdon, Rockland County.
Thank you, Pat. May I have a second?
Second, Yogesh Sanghvi, New York City DOT.
Thank you, Yogesh. We will now vote by roll call, starting with the lower Hudson Valley. Putnam County?
Aye.
Rockland County?
Aye.
Westchester County?
Aye.
And now Long Island, Nassau County?
Aye.
Suffolk County?
Aye.
And New York City DOT?
Aye.
New York City Department of City Planning?
Aye.
And finally, the Metropolitan Transportation Authority?
Aye.
And New York State Department of Transportation votes aye. Thank you all. The motion passes. All right, so the next action item is to adopt resolution number 570, amendments to federal fiscal years 2022 to 2050 Regional Transportation Plan for the Major Metropolitan Transportation Investment. I will now ask Leslie Folger of NYMTC staff to introduce this resolution. Leslie?
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me? Excellent. So,
yes, we can.
Great. So, and thank you. So I'm here to discuss Resolution 570. Resolution 570 will amend the Hunts Point Rail Terminal Market Project to the plan as a major metropolitan transportation investment. Now, why do we need this particular amendment? Well, this project, which is in the plan, has exceeded the threshold for a major project, which in this case is $500 million. Additionally, it's receiving federal aid, so that qualifies it for inclusion in the major metropolitan transportation investment. So in order, to maintain fiscal constraint, we will need to amend this project. Well, I should say, NYMTC staff recommends we amend this project to the plan as a major metropolitan transportation investment. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. May I have a motion to adopt resolution number 570, amendments to federal fiscal years 2022 to 2025 Regional Transportation Plan for a major metropolitan transportation investment?
Motion, Craig Lader, Westchester County.
Thank you, Craig. And may I have a second?
Second, Chris Chatterton, Suffolk County.
Thank you, Chris. We will now once again vote by roll call, starting with the lower Hudson Valley. Putnam County?
Aye.
Rockland County?
Aye.
Westchester County?
Aye.
Okay, and now Long Island, Nassau County?
Aye.
Suffolk County?
Aye.
New York City, we're going to have New York City Department of Transportation.
Aye.
New York City Department of City Planning.
Aye.
And then for New York State Metropolitan Transportation Authority.
Aye.
And then New York State Department of Transportation votes aye. Thank you all. The motion passes. The last action item of this meeting is to adopt resolution number 571, amendments to the state fiscal year 2023 to 2024 Unified Planning Work Program. I will now ask Setu Allen of NYMTC staff to introduce this resolution. Setu?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So this resolution has a series of actions to amend the 2023-2024 Unified Planning Work Program. The first request is from the Metropolitan Transportation Authority, and they're requesting to add the first mile, last mile toolkit update enhancement planning activity to this program. In addition, the New York City Department of Transportation is requesting to add unspent funds from prior program years to the current program for certain planning activities that are already identified in the UPWP. And finally, New York City Department of Transportation is requesting to add the Brooklyn-Queens Expressway North and South Corridor Vision Planning activity to the Unified Planning Work Program's catalog of non-UPWP funded activities. This project will seek to develop community-driven recommendations to reconnect Brooklyn communities divided by the BQE, focusing on spaces under and around the expressway from Sand Street to the, I'm going to mispronounce this, Kosciuszko Bridge, and from Atlantic Avenue to the Verrazano Narrows Bridge. That is a summary of the actions, and NYMTC staff request that you please adopt this resolution.
Great. Thank you, Seitu. May I have a motion to adopt resolution number 571, amendments to the state fiscal year 2023 to 2024 Unified Planning Work Program?
So moved, Jack Schmidt, New York City Planning.
Thank you, Jack. And may I have a second?
Second, Barbara Barosa, Putnam County.
Thank you, Barbara. And you guys know the routine. We will now vote by roll call, starting with the lower Hudson, Putnam County.
Aye.
Rockland County.
Aye.
Westchester County.
Aye.
And Long Island, Nassau County.
Aye.
Suffolk County.
Aye.
And New York City, we'll have New York City Department of Transportation.
Aye.
New York City Department of City Planning.
Aye.
And then for New York State Metropolitan Transportation Authority.
Aye.
And New York State Department of Transportation votes aye. Thank you all. The motion passes. So I wanted to confirm the next PFAC meeting is scheduled for Thursday, February 15th, 2024. Details of this meeting will be made available 2 weeks prior to the meeting date. I would also like to note that NYMTC's annual meeting is scheduled for Thursday, February 29th, 2024. Details of this meeting will also be made available 2 weeks prior to the meeting date. I will now conclude the meeting, today's meeting. I will ask for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Motion, Chris Chatterton, Suffolk County.
Thank you, Chris. And may I have a second?
Second, Jack Schmidt, New York City Planning.
Thank you, Jack. Does anyone object to this motion? Okay, well, hearing none, this meeting is now adjourned. Thank you, everyone, and I hope you all enjoy holidays. And I have now adjourned the meeting. Thank you all. Take care.